And now it's my real true honor to bring in our speaker for today. Jeanne Zaino does commentary on Bloomberg News, and she's also a senior democracy fellow at the Ash Center at Harvard University in Cambridge, and she is also a professor at Iona College in New Rochelle. And I really am taking great honor in presenting her to you.
Thank you so much. It is so great to see all of you here, and thank you to Fred for the invitation. I am truly honored. As Fred mentioned, I'm a professor of government. I'm also a Bloomberg News political contributor, trying, as so many of us are, to keep up with the news on a daily basis is not easy, but we try. And how wonderful to see all of you out here. It is really so important, the work that you are doing. Truly. I have to have notes because I'm a professor, so forgive me if I read them a little bit. I want to just start with a quote by one of my favorite philosophers. Yay! Who is Hannah Arendt? Hannah Arendt that's very good. Hannah Arendt said this in 1953. She was writing from her work in New York back to Karl Jaspers in Europe, and she said the following: "You probably know a lot from the papers. Can you see from them how far the disintegration has gone, and with what breathtaking speed it has occurred? And up to now, hardly any resistance. Everything melts away like butter in the sun." And that phrase, "everything melts away like butter in the sun," is an eerie phrase to read now in 2026, as is her discussion of the quick pace of disintegration, and the fact that at least at her time, during that time, her view was that there was hardly any resistance. And so much of that resonates with us today, except for the resistance part. And you are a sign of that unlike what Hannah Arendt was seeing in the 50s in New York City, there is resistance today. And that resistance is critical. As Fred mentioned, I am working right now at the Ash Center for Democracy at the Harvard Kennedy School. And that place is filled with the most amazing researchers, thinkers, and people, except for myself, in the world. So it's such an honor to be there. And one of the people there is a woman who has done a lot of work on peaceful resistance. And she has this rule of thumb, the 3.5% rule, which so many of you may have heard of. Her name is Erica Chenoweth, and she has found in her research that 3.5% of a population coming out and resisting is enough to push back on an autocrat in almost every instance. And so 3.5% matters. In fact, she finds that 1% is enough to push back on almost 50% of autocrats historically. And if you look back at one of the last resistance movements, or the No Kings protest that we saw, it had about 5 million people, making it the third largest in US history. And that was well over the percentage necessary. And I suspect that next week, for the 18th, we are going to break that record. So I hope everybody comes out, right? So her research does support the fact that coming out on a semi-rainy day in Mount Kisco, New York, all the work that Fred has done and all of you have done to make this happen really, really does impact in the long term. And so that is something I would say just to keep you coming out and to keep you doing this kind of work. And I know it is not easy to do. I would also, from my own work, Erica's work is much more inspiring. One thing I would also caution people about is to not let up. Even when the immediate culprit is no longer in our faces on a daily basis. This is another thing that history shows us. We think about the fact that Hannah Arendt was writing in 1953, and here we are again. And here we will be again, unfortunately, if we don't think beyond just the immediate concerns that we have today. And so there's a parable that some of you may be familiar with, the upstream parable, which is a parable that came from health policy, but it's a really important reminder. The upstream parable talks about the fact that somebody is having a nice picnic on a river and sees a child in the stream and runs in to save that child. And then immediately when they pull that child out, they look and there's another child in the stream and they pull that child out. And over and over and over again, they rescue the children. And then finally, they run upstream and somebody says, "Where are you going?" And she says, "To see who the hell keeps throwing these children in the water." That is the idea of upstreaming. And what we found in American history, people like John Bile and others who have done great work in this area, Joan Williams and others, is that this is not the work of one person or one group, right? And it is not enough to just keep trying to rescue children out of the river. You need to upstream and support the work of people who are upstreaming to change the structure and our institutions if we want to ensure that this doesn't happen again, right? So this includes things like addressing our amendment process, addressing our electoral college, addressing our, as we're all talking about today, redistricting policies and processes, right? And so many other things that all of you care about. And I think one difficult question that we all have to ask ourselves is, would you be standing here if it wasn't for the outcome of the 24 election? If that election had turned out differently, would you be standing here? And for many people, the answer is no. And that's unfortunate for all of us. It's human nature, but it's unfortunate because that suggests that, like many humans, we are responding in a downstream fashion and not getting to the root causes. And so that's another thing that I would just urge you to think about, is supporting the work of people who are upstream trying to make the less exciting, less sexy, less fun structural and institutional changes that are necessary to save this system and this democracy. Because merely replacing people or parties is not enough. There are much broader reasons that we're in the position we are in. So thank you for paying attention to the upstream issue. The last thing I would say is, like all parables, the upstream parable is a story made up to make a point. And it's always focused on throwing children into the river. And of course, whenever I talk about it to students or other people, I say, well, that, of course it's ridiculous. This is a parable. But in fact, as we stand here today, the United States is throwing children into the river, right? They are. If this, no matter what you feel about the shutdown, if it lasts into next week, reports are that 5 million babies under the age of 5 will lose their SNAP benefits. That's on top of the 2 million that already have lost them as a result of the bill that was signed earlier this year. So all of you out here doing this work and your signs about children, these situations and realities that we are facing that, even just a few years ago, that parable would have just been a story so far-fetched, is really, really sadly true today. So I know Fred, and I have to tell you, by the way, I have uncovered something about Fred. For years, I used a piece in class called Who Counts? And it is such a brilliant look at the 2000 election, and I can't find it anymore. And I come here to Mount Kisco, and I'm talking to Fred, and it turns out he made Who Counts? And it is a brilliant piece. And so I'm in awe. It's so well done. I always used it until we got rid of VCRs and VHS tapes, and I can't use it in the classroom anymore. So thank you, Fred, for that. And he said he'd give me a copy, maybe. But remember the 3.5% rule. Remember, even half of that, 1.5%, has an enormous impact. So you are all doing amazing work. And even when who you support wins, that's not enough. These are structural, historical, institutional issues that date, I love the founding, but they date to the founding, if not before. And unless we start to work on those, we will, or your children and grandchildren will find themselves here once again, unfortunately. So thank you very much. I'm so honored to be here. And thank you, Fred.